Welcome to the Play Action Podcast. It is great to be with you as week number 2 of the NFL is done. Week number 3 is coming up. We have much to talk about. Dave Farra alongside Matt Brown and Joe Fortenbaugh. If you have not yet, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube page so that way you get all the latest SBR videos. And you can also follow along on Twitter, SBR Sports Picks, and that's where you're going to get all sorts of information as the week goes along. We're pulling all of the odds that we're talking about from SBRodds.com. Gentlemen, now that week 2 is done, we're starting to learn a little bit about these teams that are on the field, and we're getting more comfortable with going, okay, now we've seen a couple of weeks of play. Stocks are going up. Stocks are going down. Matt, you're first on this one. Who are you starting to see on the rise?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if there's a couple of teams that I didn't peg at the beginning of the season the way they were going to turn out, right now, the Broncos are really impressing me. I mean, listen, I didn't know if this defense was going to be able to be as good as they have been in years past, and sure enough, they've been very, very good so far. And Trevor Siemian's play has actually been, dare I say, top half of the league worthy. Top half of the league worthy here. So, I mean, look, they're 2-0 wins over the Chargers and Cowboys. They got the Bills, the Raiders, and the Giants over the next 3 games. We might be looking at a 4-1 team when this is all said and done. Another one of the teams is the Falcons. We weren't quite sure that this offense was going to be as good as it had been last year. It looks to be every bit as good, maybe even better here. Steve Sarkisian definitely has this offense rolling through the first couple of games of the season here. I expected the Falcons to maybe take a step back, and they did not. So that's a couple of teams that really have jumped off the page to me.
All right, Joe, who's going up?
You know, Matt, I got to agree with the 2 picks, excuse me, boys, that you threw out there. Denver now 19-1 since the year 2000 in the first 2 weeks of the season when playing at home. Keep that in mind for next year. 2 games, 2 teams for me. One, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're 1-1 on the season, but they showed a lot of moxie in Kansas City last week. In Kansas City, according to many, the #1 power-ranked team in the National Football League. We knew Philadelphia had an up-and-coming quarterback in Carson Wentz. They can run the ball a little bit, and they can protect to an extent. The receiver corps is improved. We know what they do on offense, but it's the defense, the front 7, that was absolutely ferocious. If Alex Smith is going to go to New England and torch the Patriots on Super Bowl celebration night to open the season, then come home and struggle the way he did against that Philadelphia defense, that's saying something. Team number 2, the Detroit Lions. You got to give them a lot of credit. They came back to beat Arizona in the 4th quarter at home in week 1. That's one thing. But to go on the road on Monday night against the New York Giants, who are coming off that loss, say what you want about the Giants. Matthew Stafford and the Lions look like the real deal this year.
Are you buying Amir Abdullah? That's the thing with me. I'm wondering, are they going to have a run game, or is this going to be strictly on the arm of Matt Stafford? I tend to believe that this is going to be on the arm of Matt Stafford. Theo Riddick maybe coming out of the backfield will be the running back there. I mean, I don't know. Amir Abdullah to me seems like a little bit of fool's gold.
I couldn't agree more. This team hasn't had a 100-yard rusher in how many games has it been? I don't see it changing now. Something has to crack for the Lions in order to get to the next point, that tipping point, and that's going to be when they improve the running game.
Those are teams that are trending up. Who is trending down? Matt, you're first.
I mean, I hate to be able to go first here and steal these from Joe because these have to be a couple of the ones that he wanted to talk about. But listen, the New York Football Giants has to be on the top of everybody's list. This team looks absolutely pathetic at every single facet of the game right now. Can't run a lick. Offensive line, giving up sacks left and right. Eli Manning looks incredibly old. You got Brandon Marshall dropping balls left and right. An injured Odell Beckham. I mean, every single thing you could say about this team from a negative standpoint basically applies at this juncture. And listen, the Jacksonville Jaguars for me, because we figured this defense was going to be good enough to keep these guys in games, and Blake Bortles would be able to make at least a play or two to get these guys some wins. And listen, the 1-1 record is a little bit misleading here. They beat another terrible team in the NFL right now. Joe, I think this Jaguars team, especially with Blake Bortles at quarterback, is going to really, really struggle despite how good that defense is.
I'd agree with both. And then the other 2 that I would throw in there, 1, the Seattle Seahawks, just 21 points through the first 2 games of the season. The defense can play. The problem is the offense is absolutely abysmal behind that offensive line. I'm not sure Russell Wilson is going to make it a full 16 games this season standing upright behind that unit. To come home and need to grind it out late against this 49er team says a lot. This week, they're going to be at Tennessee. That's going to be a very interesting game because one of those 2 teams is going to be 1-2 at the conclusion of that, and both were predicted to get to the playoffs and make some noise this year. Team number 2 on the trending down low side would be the Carolina Panthers. Something is wrong with quarterback Cam Newton, completing just 59% of his passes this year. But Matt, you and I were watching the Bills game together this past Sunday. Newton's missing wide open receivers, and he's done it 2 weeks in a row, and now he's going to be without Greg Olsen for the next 8 weeks due to a broken foot. I don't like anything about the Panthers right now except their defense. I think you're going to get a good underplay on this squad moving forward. The under already 2-0 in Panther games this year.
All right, so let's dive right into one of the teams that we think is trending down as well. Jacksonville Jaguars headed to London this week, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Anytime that there's this trip overseas, it always does affect the game to some degree. Matt, you're up first on this one. How do you see this game going?
Listen, for me, this is a gross game. Joe, we talk about how unfair it is in these London games since we live on the West Coast that we have to wake up at 6 a.m. to see. I'm glad this game is in London. I'm glad that I'm going to be half asleep whenever I'm watching this game go down because goodness gracious, this Jaguars team. Now, listen, I don't know about you, but for me, this just screams under left and right to me. We have a couple of good defenses. We have one team we know that cannot score at all and one team that can barely score in the Ravens. Plus, you talk about the travel, everything, every single thing about this game just screams under to me.
Yeah, and it opened at 40.5 as the total in that one, and it's ticked down just a little bit in some places, 40, 39.5. So I think your instincts are probably right because that's what the money is showing. As far as who's the favorite in this one, Baltimore is laying 3.5 points, 4 in some spots, even though they opened at 2.5.
The total always worries me with these London games because the field is very different than what these guys are used to playing on here in the States. You go over there, those are soccer fields that are designed to drain out a different way. The grass is a little bit different. It feels like if they get some residue, which they tend to year after year, it gets a little slick and players have trouble adjusting with their cleats. Now, by halftime, they'll make the necessary adjustments, but with the total, I don't know. Cornerbacks falling down. I would just lean to the Ravens in this spot. I don't love it, but you've got Blake Bortles, and you saw everything you needed to see from Blake Bortles last week against the Titans. He was terrible. They won in week 1, the Jaguars that is, despite Blake Bortles, not because of him. The Ravens are a very quiet 2-0. Granted, it was against the Browns last week, but they did handle their business. I'd lean Baltimore here.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette's going to see so many 8-man boxes. It's going to be unbelievable. They're
going to ruin this kid's career.
I know.
So Carolina Panthers and New Orleans Saints is next. Joe, you were talking about how there appears to be some problems with the offense of the Carolina Panthers, but the defense we know for a fact is a problem for the New Orleans Saints. Is this an interesting game to you guys or not? I mean, looking at the way that it opened versus where it sits now, 49 is the total. Carolina laying 5.5. It's since moved to Carolina laying 6 in some places. You can also over on say just better bet DSI find Carolina laying 5. Joe, you're up first.
Well, this would fly directly in the face of what I just said about Carolina with unders. But if there's one thing that solves an under or an offensive problem, it's a date with the New Orleans Saints defense. Bill Barnwell from ESPN, I think, said it better than anyone else this past Sunday when that Saints defense was getting wrecked by Tom Brady. Quote, they should let Drew Brees play one game against the Saints defense before he retires, just as an apology. That's how bad this defense is. Brady was throwing ducks up in the air, and they were being caught with no defender anywhere in the picture. You wouldn't see him anywhere in the frame. So I noticed that the totals come from somewhere around 49 down to maybe 46, 46.5. I might lean to the over in this spot, as crazy as that sounds, because that New Orleans defense can't stop anybody.
Boy, I am on the complete opposite side of you. This is one of our first big disagreements, I think, here on the show. I mean, listen, where are the points going to come from? New Orleans is down huge to New England, who has a far inferior defense to Carolina, could only score 20 points. And I don't trust Cam Newton to go out there, especially now he loses his most trusted receiver in Greg Olsen for the foreseeable future. I mean, for me, I don't know where the points are going to come from. When I saw this number, especially when it opened at 49, I could see why it got beat down real quick. I still think at 46.5 that this is a number that you could easily see a 20-13 game. I mean, like, where are the points coming from, Joe? I don't know where they're going to come from. We all know that Drew Brees plays worse on the road, especially outdoors and everything like that. I mean, for me, I love this number to go under.
All right, this next game we're not going to spend a lot of time on because it's not even on the board. Minnesota Vikings and Tampa Bay Bucs, because we have no idea what's going on at quarterback position for the Minnesota Vikings. If it's Case Keenum, that's a big difference than if it's Sam Bradford. And so there's really not a lot to talk about on this one, other than I think we can all say, even though in week number 1, Minnesota looked good if they're without Sam Bradford, especially going up against what looks to be a very potent offense of Tampa Bay. You can't take Minnesota,
yeah,
right?
It'll be very interesting to see where this comes in if Sam Bradford does choose to go, because the reports coming out, Joe, that I've seen are that this was a non-contact injury. So this was just his knee flaring up, and this has obviously had tons of problems throughout his entire career. So for me, listen, I wouldn't like Minnesota. Basically, I don't care where this base ends up. I don't like Minnesota because I don't like the chances of him making it the whole game. And we saw what happens to this team when Case Keenum's at quarterback.
I would think of it like this. When the line comes out, there's going to be a little bit of an effect regarding what happened recently. And what did we see most recently from these two teams? Tampa looked really good at home against a bad Chicago Bears team. And the Minnesota Vikings looked dreadful with Case Keenum on the road at Pittsburgh. Now Minnesota's coming back home where they have a real nice advantage. People are going to be very high on Tampa Bay. If anything, I think this line may be a bit inflated towards the Buccaneers. There could be some value on the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, looking at the total in this next game, it's a low one. It's Buffalo and Denver. It's going to be one of the early games come Sunday. Open at 41. Now it sits at 40 almost everywhere. And Denver opened as laying 1 point. Now that's since moved to 3.5 in some places over on Bovada. 3 pretty much across the board everywhere else. Again, SBRodds.com for all of the latest lines. But Denver and Buffalo, Joe, how do you see this one going?
Low scoring, like you said. Defensively, this Denver unit isn't going to be as sharp as we saw in their first 2 games because they were playing at home in primetime matchups. Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo, a bit more of a home field advantage for the Bills than people give it credit for. There are teams that go to Buffalo and struggle on the regular. Sometimes it has to do with the weather, which you shouldn't deal with too much inclement weather here, but you never know how it's going to play out. Denver's riding high. Huge division win over the Chargers. Huge marquee win over Dallas. This could be an easy game to come in and potentially overlook, especially with a date with the Oakland Raiders on the very near horizon. So I look at this game and I think to myself, people are going to be, the public that is, all over Denver. Could be some value in playing the home dog in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a square side for me, but again, I kind of look at this and say, how is Buffalo going to score points? They can't pass the ball. They have no receivers whatsoever, and Tyrod Taylor has been inaccurate so far this season, and they don't want him to play quarterback anyway. So then you look at that and you say, okay, well, they do have Shady McCoy. Well, Dallas also has Ezekiel Elliott, and you saw what this Denver defense was able to do to Ezekiel Elliott. So I don't see a lot of success on the ground coming for Buffalo there. Listen, Denver, even if it is 3, now if it gets to 3 and a hook, maybe this is something I would think about again. But listen, at 3 is certainly a number that I am okay taking here, because again, I don't know how Buffalo has a route to success in this game other than Trevor Siemian absolutely stinking the place up and giving them short field position or something like that. And he's actually been a pretty good game manager so far.
One of the biggest dogs on the board this week is the Chicago Bears going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, early game on Sunday, open at 46. Has since dropped back to 44 across the board as we currently sit. Pittsburgh open at 7.5, laying that, and then now they're laying 8.5 in some places, 7 in others. Joe, you're first on this one. How do you see this game?
The Bears have covered the spread in 5 of their last 6 home games. This is a non-conference opponent for Pittsburgh, so they're going to take their act on the road to Soldier Field. Remember what happened to the Falcons there in week 1. Granted, the Falcons are a dome team that was coming outdoors for the season opener. It's a different story with Philadelphia, but we're talking a touchdown plus as a home dog. There's no situation I think you're going to find me in at any point where I'm going to lay a touchdown on the road. There's just no situation where that's going to happen. So if I'm playing a side here, I'm looking to the Chicago Bears. The quarterback play's been shaky, but the defense has been half decent. What you need from John Fox's crew is to get a little bit of the running game going and then have Mike Glennon not completely melt down on a regular basis. It's a tall ask at this point, considering they're still unwilling to move over to Mitchell Trubisky, but that's too many points to lay on the road with a team like Pittsburgh.
I mean, this is the theme of the week, right? I think we have 10 or 11 home dogs on the slate so far this week. And listen, this game, as soon as I saw it, Joe, I mean, I see you lean a little bit towards the Bears. It's just a stay away for me. I looked at it and I was like, yeah, touchdown seems about right. Pittsburgh really hasn't hit their stride yet. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, 27 touches last week and only had 87 yards. I mean, he hasn't found the holes yet. I don't know if we can attribute that to him staying out the entire training camp or what, or if they maybe just are a little off right now. They insert Martavis Bryant back in as well, trying to figure out how to get him the ball. Just hasn't really started to click yet. I think this number's right on for me, so it's a stay away for me.
Speaking of dogs at home, how about Miami traveling to play against the Jets in New Jersey? They opened laying 3.5. It has since gone up significantly, 6.5, 7 in some places on Miami. The total has also crept up slightly, open at 41 now, seeing it at 42.5 at the highest point. Matt, you're first.
I think you can give me the over all day in this game. Look, the Jets have given up 66 points through the first 2 games of the season. I think I saw enough in one game and in the preseason that I believe Jay Cutler can still play in this league, and he certainly has the most amount of weapons at his disposal that he's had in his career. He's always had one guy. You know, when he was with the Bears, he always had one guy. He's got multiple guys now in this game. The only thing is, as of Wednesday, whenever we're looking at these injury reports, Jay Ajayi did not practice on Wednesday. That certainly changes the dynamic a lot if Jay Ajayi is not able to play in this game. But let's just assume it's a day of rest. He's a running back in this league. He's a bell cow. Certainly a guy you don't want to press in practice if you don't have to. So for me, Joe, as it sits today, as we feel confident that he's going to play, give me the over in this. Hell, I think Miami might be able to get 42 points on their own.
I lean there as well. The over's 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between these two teams. I know you have new personnel here, but how excited can you get about the Dolphins? I could see them waxing the Jets. Don't get me wrong, but you get displaced because Hurricane Irma, so you have a very emotional Week 1 game where you spent an excessive amount of time in Los Angeles getting ready for the Chargers. You needed a missed field goal late to win that game. You end up winning, though. Great situation. Now you're going to travel all the way back to the East Coast and then head all the way to the Northeast to play the Jets. The travel's eventually going to catch up with these guys. I mean, it's been nothing but emotion and nothing but being anything but comfortable this early in the season. That's something to keep in mind with the Dolphins down the road. Eventually, this is going to wear on them. For this game, I'm thinking over because we saw the Jets could put some points up in Oakland, and we saw Derek Carr and the Raider offense just shred these dudes. Getting to 28, I would look to the Miami team total in this situation. Last week, the Oakland team total was 27.5. I bet the Miami team total is maybe 22, 23. We'd have to look at the overall spread and factor all that in, but I'd end up playing the over on that. I think Miami by themselves team total would be the play.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point here about the travel stuff. I think that comes into play a little bit later in the season. I think this early in the season, these guys aren't near as banged up and don't need near as much time off. And you're talking about a team that basically got a bye in Week 1, so they're only one game into the season. I think it would be a bigger deal to me if we're talking this was in Week 6, Week 7. Here in Week 2, with them getting a bye in Week 1 doesn't really affect me all that much.
Speaking of being uncomfortable, that was a great way of putting it, Joe. Eli Manning and the New York Giants have had a pretty uncomfortable week, and if there's anyone that's made headlines, it's that squad, and here they are going up against Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they've improved. They open at laying 5. Now they're laying 7 in some places. 6 is the most common thing. 43 being the total in this one. That's crept down in a couple of places.
This is a beatdown.
This is going to
be a beatdown right here. They are going to head on a short week into Philadelphia, and Joe, this is going to be an utter beatdown. Carson Wentz is going to put his name on the map to all the people that aren't football people. Like, football people know Carson Wentz can play, and they've actually seen what he's done so far this season. Now everybody else is going to get a taste of what this guy can do. Much more weapons around him now. At this number, this is going to be a brutal beatdown. I might take the alternate line in this one, being honest. Like, seriously, I might take the alternate line in this one. That's how bad I think the Eagles are going to win this game.
The Giants are 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 games against the Eagles. So there's some recency pointing towards Philadelphia in this series. The Giants can't score, and Philadelphia's front 7 has been outstanding through the first 2 weeks of the season. Look at the way they got after Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. This is a really bad New York Jets offensive line, and it's a one-dimensional New York Jets team that cannot run the football.
Giants.
Big spread for a divisional rivalry. Big spread for divisional rivalry. Love the Eagles in 6-point teaser plays. I think that's one half of the equation that you can go ahead and virtually lock up.
49 is what it opened at. Atlanta is packing their bags and heading to Detroit for a game at home in Detroit. And they were laying 3. Now it's down to 2.5 in some places, but 3 is the most common that I'm seeing. Total is creeping up a little bit to 50.5 across the board right now. Again, looking at SBRodds.com. Joe, you're first on this one.
Give me the Lions, especially if you can get the field goal. This line's all out of whack. At the very least, this should be a pick 'em. This should be a pick 'em. Why is Atlanta laying 3, 2.5 on the road against a good Detroit team? It's not a great Detroit team, but are you kidding me? Atlanta's not that great. They looked very solid against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday night. But look at all the factors there. Primetime Sunday night game, you're opening up a new stadium, and you're going against a Packer team that outside of Aaron Rodgers, what else is there, man? Green Bay's really not that great. They just have an unbelievable quarterback. This team ranks 8th in terms of available salary cap space. The Packers should be spending money in free agency to take advantage of the Aaron Rodgers year, and they're not, because that's the problem with the Green Bay Packers. They don't build through free agency. They build through the draft. Great, but every year when you're a playoff team, you're drafting at 26, 27, and 28. You're not getting the cream of the crop. That's the fundamental flaw in Green Bay's approach. So that's a bit of a digression on the Packers, but as it stands for the Falcons, good team, but you should not be laying 2.5 or 3 in Detroit. Shootout all over it. I like the Lions here. I like the Lions to win this game.
All right, here we go, Matt. Over to you, Atlanta, Detroit. How do you see this one go?
Yeah, I might disagree that the Packers don't have any talent, but that's for another day here. Now, listen, Joe, you're the big guy that says dome teams going and not playing in their dome, but this is a dome team going to another dome. You don't think that this is something that would play in Atlanta's favor here?
I think you have a lot of people who are looking at Atlanta's domination of the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football thinking Atlanta's unstoppable. I think you have a lot of people looking at the Lions team thinking, same old Lions, and I think that's cooked into the line. I think this is strictly a numbers play. It's not a jersey play. It's a numbers play. If you power rank these teams out, I don't have the Falcons as 6-point favorites. I don't have them as 6 points better than the Detroit Lions. So because of that, I just see value in the number at this point.
Yeah, I like the Falcons in this game, and I'll tell you why. I didn't like what I saw from Detroit closing out this game against the Giants. I mean, they had a very bad team reeling, and they could not put the nail in the coffin. I mean, they were struggling down the stretch there, not able to do anything. Listen, we already talked. I don't believe in the run game here. The really only one good receiver there in Golden Tate. So I don't like what I saw in Detroit closing out that game. I do like every single thing I've seen from Atlanta so far this year. And listen, if you can get it at 2.5, now the 3, you might be looking at a push here, but 2.5 at 5 dimes, if you look at SBRodds.com right now, I think that's a really good bet. I think I would take that.
Well, it didn't take long for people to regain their confidence in the New England Patriots. You know, after week number 1, they're done. It's all over. Tom Brady should just go ahead and quit right now. And then here we go into this Houston game. 44 is the total where it opened up. It stayed flat there. However, New England was laying 11. Now they're laying in some places 14.5. Joe, is that accurate or is that crazy going up against this Houston defense?
Oh, my God. It's an insane number, but every time we've seen these two get together, Brady loves to trash these guys. Do you remember when the Texans went up for that primetime game at Foxborough and wore the Letterman's jackets and got beat by 40? I mean, didn't the Texans lose to the backup squad last year when Brady was suspended? Were the Texans one of the 4 teams that lost to the Patriots early? I might be wrong there. I'm not laying this many points. There's just no way I'm laying this many points in any situation. But how do you get behind Deshaun Watson right now? I like him for the future, but again, he's very raw. I mean, this was a guy, he looked for one read, and if it wasn't there, he was looking to tuck and run. That's not going to work against Bill Belichick. Belichick has a history, a really strong history that also is in favor when it comes to the spread of lighting up rookie quarterbacks, inexperienced quarterbacks. So right here, this might be this is a complete stay away on all equations.
You and me both. So you and I sat together and we were going over games last week, and there were 2 games that had spreads that got this big. And we said, you know what? Listen, over the long haul in the NFL, if you're laying 14.5 points, you're probably a long-term loser here. And sure enough, last week they went 1-1, right? And if you're going 50%, you're losing to the VIG and you're a loser, right? And so for me, I'm not going to make a habit of going and taking the points in these gigantic spreads in the NFL. I mean, quirky things happen. Teams shut it down in the second half. They take their starter. And listen, if you're Bill Belichick, that's another thing to keep in mind here. This team is beat up. I mean, all over the place, this team is beat up. I could easily see them getting out to a huge lead in this game and then him pulling the starters in favor of the second team to make sure he can keep these guys healthy, because all over the place at all the skill positions, he's got guys that are injured. So, you get that late field goal, the garbage touchdown or something like that, and you're going to beat yourself up that you took this many points.
Hey guys, the Cleveland Browns are favored
for the first time in like a couple years.
Seriously. Just to give you an idea of how much of a shit show the Indianapolis Colts are, it has gotten to that point now where it opens as a pick'em, and now the Cleveland Browns are favored. They're laying 1 point and 1.5 in some spots. It's come down a little bit as far as where it opened. Started at 41. Now it's at 40.5, depending on where you look. But Matt, you're up first on this one. Cleveland Browns this week, yes or no?
They are finally not the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah.
And they are playing the worst team in the NFL. And listen, it's a pick 'em. If I'm picking this game, Joe, if someone had a gun to my head and they're like, all you have to do is pick the game, which right now at a couple of different books, it's a pick. Who is going to win that game with that gun to my head? I think I'm saying the Cleveland Browns are going to win the game. I mean, listen, I like their defense much better than I like the Colts defense. And if we're talking offense, it's kind of a push. I mean, yeah, it's a rookie quarterback going up against Jacoby Brissett, who's got just a few starts over New England. For me, I think as a pick, I'm taking the Browns, man. Am I crazy here to think that this team is a better team than the Colts right now?
What's crazy is the fact that the NFL is going to put this game on TV. You can't show this. You can't show this. You already have a problem with soccer moms or young mothers steering their kids away from football. You put this on TV, you're going to scare half the population away from the sport. This is disgusting, putting these two against each other. That being said, do you really want to be the asshole that lays points on the road with the Browns and then watch them play like the Browns and they lose 6-2? And you're sitting there going, why was I laying points with the Browns on the road? You got to stay away from this game. You got to stay away from it. It's not good for your health. If for some reason you bet this game, you're going to end up watching it. And I'm telling you, you will not get that time back.
Maybe that's
Go outside, get some fresh air.
Maybe that's the best advice we could give. If you do end up betting this game, do not watch it.
Don't watch it.
Yeah, don't watch it. Tune in. Just follow along on your mobile phone and find this thing. Just game watch it on your phone, and then you can say.
But this is a hard and fast rule. No matter what happens, if you actually put some money on this game, you can't be mad at the outcome.
You're not going to be happy either.
There's no guarantees here.
No matter what happens, even if you win your bet, you're going to go, wow, that was 3.5 hours. I'm never going to get back.
Everybody, this is a situation where literally everyone loses, including the house. Everyone walks away a loser here.
So let's jump to the later games here. Seattle and Tennessee. Seattle opens laying 1 point now. That has shifted. Tennessee is laying 3 in a lot of spots. The total has come down just a little bit. 44 is where it opened now. 42 to 42.5 is what everyone is saying. So, Joe, you're first on this one. How do you see this game going? We know that Seattle has had some problems, a lot of problems with that offensive line. And offensively, overall, they've had a problem scoring so far this season. Does that change against a questionable defense in Tennessee?
I'm going under here. The value in the line is gone. If you could have gotten Tennessee as a home dog in this situation, I would have played it. If you could get it where you're laying 1, I would have laid it. But now it's up to 2.5, and you could see this game 10-9. You could see this game 7-6. You could see it 14-13. I'm not going to lay 2.5 with Tennessee at home. I tried to do that against the Raiders, and the Raiders came in and shredded them. But here comes Seattle. Great defense, but can't protect. Tennessee is going to take advantage of that, and Russell Wilson is eventually going to wear down. So the way I see this game, it's a battle for field position. As long as you are able to avoid massive, costly turnovers, look at the San Francisco-Seattle game from last week. Similar situation. I see this game 13-9 right in that wheelhouse.
I could not have put that any better. Had Dave said, Matt, you first, I would have said the same thing. You lost
verbatim,
the value,
right?
You lost the value here. I mean, the value is if you were getting plus points. Now, and now that you're laying, I don't see any reason to go here. Definitely an underlooking game here, and mainly for the reason that you can actually run on Seattle so far this season. There are teams that are running the ball, and what can Tennessee do? They can run the football, even if DeMarco Murray sits this game out because he came up lame with a hamstring injury. They're saying it still looks okay, but that might not be the case. You still have another beast to put right in there that, by the way, over their last 7 games, if you look at the comparables as far as like touches they've gotten, has actually outperformed DeMarco Murray as far as yards per carry. So for me, Joe, I think Tennessee sees all this. They try to run the ball. They keep the ball out of the air against that defense that can still defend the pass. Let's just be honest. I mean, I thought this defense was going to fall off. They haven't so far. They still defend the pass, but they're giving up yards on the run here. I think this is an under game. I could see this bleeding down because, again, I think Russell Wilson might be hashtag not good. I think there's a pretty decent chance that he's not good.
You've been saying that for like 5 seasons now.
I think. What did he do last year? He wasn't good. I think the guy's not good. We always give this guy a pass, like, oh, his offensive line.
I mean, that's a real thing, right?
It's a really bad offensive line.
It's a really bad, and it has been for 2 years.
It's a really bad offensive line, but he never catches any of the blame whatsoever. He still misses wide open passes. He still makes poor decisions. I don't know. I mean, I think he's an average quarterback.
All right, Chiefs and Chargers up next. This one also a later game. Kansas City open up laying at 4.5 now. That's moved down a little bit to 3 across the board. Total has crept up though, so 45.5 is where we begin. Now we're at 47.5 across the board. And as we're recording this show, Joe, you take it away.
I can't play Kansas City here. When are they going to get a break? They have to go to Foxborough to open the season. They come home and they get a slugfest with Philadelphia. Now they're back on the road for a division rivalry against Phillip Rivers and the Chargers, who, let's face it, the Chargers will always find a way to beat the Chargers late in games. They've done it twice this season so far. They've had opportunities to win, and yet they find themselves 0-2 in a really good division where everybody else is 2-0. I'll take the Chargers at home with the 3 points. Familiar opponent. I think Phillip Rivers is good enough to get a lead in this game. At some point late, someone's going to make a play in the fourth quarter to win it. I'd rather have points in my pocket in this situation. Kansas City, it's just week after week after week. These dudes are up against really good competition. Do not allow the 0-2 record to fool you here. Los Angeles, still very much a legitimate football team.
Look, I mean, they're 2 field goals away from being 2-0, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes in the NFL. I don't need the points. The Chargers are going to win outright. I'll take the plus money on the money line. Give me the Chargers in this game. Listen, every single thing that we figured was going to happen with the Chargers happened, other than them actually completing and winning these games. They're able to use Melvin Gordon. He's become a true 3-down back in here. He's actually catching passes out of the backfield now and looked really good doing it too. Even when he got kind of bottled up running the ball, has been able to be a good performer out of the backfield. Keenan Allen is healthy, a target monster. Now that they've gotten Antonio Gates the record for touchdowns, that's going to be Hunter Henry's show here. This guy is a very talented tight end and is going to be really making some noise this year as well. You still have a couple of other guys, Tyrell Williams, so many weapons here for the Chargers with the Kansas City Chiefs being down Eric Berry. Love the Chargers here. And again, I don't need the points. Give me money line.
Another total that opened up at 45.5 is this next game. Only Green Bay laying 7.5 at open. That has since increased 8.5, 9, even 10 in some spots. They're going up. Green Bay Packers versus the Cincinnati Bengals. This one's in Green Bay. Matt, you're first.
When I saw this game and I was previewing what I was going to say about all these games, I looked down and I just wanted to erase this game from my memory because everything in my brain says, wow, Green Bay should really bounce back here at home against this pathetic Bengals team. But Joe, this amount of points against a team that, listen, Cincinnati can't play this bad for the entire season. There is enough talent on this team for them to, guess what, score points. Like, they will actually score points and score touchdowns this season, believe it or not. It must be so horrible to be a Bengals fan. Every single year, all these hopes, and then it just never plays out. I can't imagine. But for me,
at least you have the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for me, this amount of points, it's just too hard for me to do, and I don't feel confident on either side here. So for me, this is just a pass. And listen, I think this is a thing that while we give our takes on a lot of these games, I think it's okay for us to say, you know, this game's a pass. This doesn't look to have an edge on one side or the other here, and I feel confident in keeping the money in my pocket and going with a game that I feel much more confident about.
If you could find the 8.5 with Green Bay, that's a beautiful 6-point teaser because it takes you right through 7. It takes you right through the key number of 3, and it sits you at 2.5. Green Bay laying 2.5 at Lambeau Field in week 3. I'd go ahead and play that. In fact, I would match that up with the teaser we had earlier on the Philadelphia Eagles against the New York Giants. So there's a 6-point teaser play for you, Packers and Eagles. As for playing the game straight, if you took the teaser out of the equation, would probably lean a little bit to Cincinnati, like you're saying. Remember, 10 days to get ready. They're 0-2, and they just fired their offensive coordinator. Marvin Lewis knows if this gets any worse, he will, in fact, be done. Andy Dalton knows if it gets any worse, he will, in fact, be done. I think everybody just lays it all out on the line in this game. I think you're going to have an offensive coordinator that lets it rip, a quarterback that lets it rip, a head coach who doesn't give a damn at this point. Let's let it rip and stop worrying about things. 10 days to get ready. There could be a couple surprises here. I'd look to the Bengals and the points if I had to play a side.
And this might be the week we finally see the Joe Mixon show, right? Like you said, they get rid of the offensive coordinator. The new guy comes in and he goes, You know what the old guy wasn't doing was featuring this super talented guy that we took a high draft pick on. So I'm going to be the guy to go ahead and feature the super talented guy that we took a high draft pick on that's more talented than the other two guys that we got. So this actually could be the Joe Mixon show this week.
Juicy total in the Sunday night game, Washington, Oakland. Oakland is traveling to Washington for this one. Could be a trap spot if you're thinking that you're really confident in Oakland here because they're traveling across the country. 53.5. It is a Sunday night game. That definitely has an effect. The total has gone up since it opened at 53.5 to 54, even 55 in some places. Oakland started out laying 2.5 now. They're laying 3 almost across the board. Joe, you're first on this one.
This is a really dangerous spot for the Oakland Raiders. Really dangerous. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I ran this study a few years ago and I went back 10 years. What happens when you play a non-conference opponent on the road 1 week before a divisional opponent on the road? And that's the scenario we have here. It's the Raiders at the Redskins, followed by the Raiders at the Denver Broncos. The non-conference game is the least important of all the games. It factors in less than anything when it comes to the tiebreakers. The division games carry more value than anything else. So right now you'd have your classic look-ahead spot. You got Sunday night under the lights. You're on the East Coast. Kirk Cousins and the Redskins coming off a win. I take the field goal here with the home dog in this situation. Hate to say it, lean to the over as well, but it's going to be Kirk Cousins and the Redskins here. I think they win this game outright.
You and me both. I don't want to say that the Raiders have been lucky, but I think that certainly everything has kind of gone their way so far. And listen, sooner or later, this defense is going to get completely exposed. There's a lot of holes in this defense. I think Kirk Cousins, they finally started to put it together last week after a really rough preseason and a pretty bad opening week game. I think they finally started to put it together. I think they will also kind of get it going a lot more this week at home against this team traveling across the country here, Joe. I love the field goal here as well. One of my top plays of the week, actually.
It was a disappointing start for both the Dallas Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals. They're going head-to-head Monday night. 47.5 is where that opened. It's come down to 47 or 46.5. Dallas is laying 3 when it opened, and it stayed about flat, 3.5 across the board. Joe, how do you see this one?
Again, it's Monday night with a home dog. I'm not going to lay 3.5 with the Dallas Cowboys on the road at Arizona, but how do you get excited about Arizona? They have looked awful through 2 games. They went to Detroit, hung tight for a while, had the lead, and then with about 8 minutes to go, completely blew it. Then the following week, they need overtime against Jacoby Brissett and the Indianapolis Colts. But here's the motivating factor. You're 1-1. It's your first home game of the year. It happens to be Monday night. It happens to be a Cowboy team that's coming off a very physical road loss at Denver. If anything, give me the Cardinals in the points here.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a 6-point teaser that really blows my skirt up here, Joe? How about getting 9 points with the Cardinals and the under and getting it up to 53 points? Can you see any way that this game it turns into any sort of shootout whatsoever with what the Cardinals are working with on offense and the way that Dallas plays? Can you see it? Listen, they're not going to be able to throw. That's the one thing we know about this Cardinals team. Patrick Peterson is going to be all up in Des Bryant's jock. You've got the Honey Badger out there that's going to be all over Jason Witten, not taking away that safety valve as well. Can you see any way this gets over 53? And can you see any way that the Cardinals lose by more than 9? I mean, I think this is like one of the best 6-point teasers on the board this week. I mean, give me the under and the +9 on a 6-point teaser in this one.
Hard for me to disagree with any of that.
All right. Last but not least, if you are joining us early, thank you for tuning in here so you can get some insight on the Thursday night game as well. And this one it's got stinker written all over it as far as an actual football game. But is there any value? Is there some plays to be made here? You got the LA Rams. You got the San Francisco 49ers. 42 is where it opened. It's since got dragged down even further. 39.5, 39 on Bovada right now. SBRodds.com is where I'm getting all of these in real time. Rams open laying 2.5, and they are pretty much there across the board. They're laying 3 in some places, also over on Bovada. Joe, you're first.
Jared Goff laying 2.5 on the road. I mean, Jared Goff in prime time.
Listen, I sit and giggle at this because we always make fun of these Thursday night games and the matchups and the different things like that, right? And then you look down and you're like, okay, it's Rams and 49ers, which is going to be a stinker anyway. And then you look down and you're like, Jared Goff it's the favorite on the road. Oh man, this is a funny game. This is a funny game.
You know what I'd like though? Here's what I think. Shaun Mcveigh, the rookie head coach for the Rams, former offensive coordinator in Washington. The one thing we know about him, he's got the offense playing better. The Rams offense through the first 2 games of the season has looked much better. Jared Goff has looked much better. He's gone from somewhere in the 50s for a completion percentage to about 65%. He's playing better and making better decisions. They can score some points against the Niners in this game. Meanwhile, the Niners are without a touchdown, but it's Thursday night. At some point, you've got to break out and get something going. This is that short week scenario where it might set you up with a couple lapses on the defensive end. 39.5 points, and you've got everyone saying under because both teams are so bad. I'll play the contrarian role here. I'll go over 39.5 points. Remember, as bad as the Niners have been the last 3 years, they have won 3 straight against the Rams.
So I'm a guy, and this will be a common theme amongst this show, and hopefully you guys have watched the first couple of weeks and already know this. I tend to stay far, far away from these Thursday games because I don't really ever know what I'm getting out of these teams. They don't have a full week to practice. They don't have a full week to heal. We don't get all the full injury reports and all the things that you would normally get throughout the week and see how guys are progressing. There's not a lot to worry about here from an injury perspective. There's no real key injuries that we're going to be monitoring. So, Joe, I kind of lean a little bit towards what you were saying with the over in this game. Now, listen, if there's one thing we can say positive about the Rams here, they have been a much better offensive team so far this season. And Jared Goff has actually shown that he can play a little bit in this league. I mean, we keep forgetting this guy was a 21-year-old rookie last year, and everyone wanted to say that he was going to be the next Ryan Leaf. I mean, he was a 21-year-old rookie under a terrible, terrible head coach. And so now that that cloud is out from over him, I mean, I've seen signs of improvement here. I think they could score some points, and in return, I think San Francisco can't be this bad on offense the entire rest of the year. I mean, listen, where's Pierre Garçon, right? I mean, they got to get this guy involved here, Joe. I can't see any reason why he has been such a persona non grata here in this offense. Like, I think finally,
it's a bad team, Matt. It's a bad team.
Yeah, I mean, look, Brian Hoyer's had success in the NFL. I mean, like, he's had success, and he's worked with he's got a number 1 receiver that he just hasn't really been able to connect with. Listen, I could see this game easily being a 21-20 game that creeps over, something like that. I mean, it's not going to be a barn burner. It's not going to be a game where it's a shootout or anything like that. But listen, 21-20 is certainly within the realm possibility. If I were betting this game, which I will not because I really don't like these Thursday games, I would lean towards the over here.
All right, let's talk about some college picks quickly here. Joe, you're first on this one. Give me 1, 2, or 3 college games that you think have some value that you're interested in playing.
Stumbled out of the gate 2 weeks ago with the college plays, but came back really strong last week. Memphis was our upset special alert. They took down UCLA. We went ahead and had some luck there. We had some luck with what else was on the card. This week, we're going to focus on 2 games. Mississippi State plus 4.5, traveling to Georgia in this game. I look at this as a matchup with the quarterbacks. Mississippi State trots out Nick Fitzgerald, 6'5", 230 pounds. He's played 23 career games at Mississippi State. He's got experience. It's a solid team coming off a nice SEC win last week. They got Auburn next week. They knew this was going to be a big 3-game stretch. You're going up against a quarterback in Jake Fromm from the Georgia Bulldogs, 6'2", 225, who's only made 3 career starts. And yeah, they beat Notre Dame a couple weeks ago in a real tight matchup, but they haven't done much offensively against 2 other patsies. I'll take the points with Mississippi State. I'm also going to take the under 52 total points, Purdue, Michigan. This game has defensive stalemate written all over it. People are overlooking Purdue this season. They're playing good football, nasty football, defensive football. They hung real tight with Louisville. They had a chance to win that game. They've won the 2 games they've played since, including smothering Missouri last weekend. I like under 52 total points, Michigan, Purdue.
Give me Tulsa to cover against New Mexico. Listen, New Mexico is down to their 3rd string quarterback in this game. Tulsa has covered 9 of their last 11 games. I think that this game is going to have a lot of points. And even though it's 10 points, I mean, it is a big spread here. I think Tulsa, listen, we all know about quarterback play in college football, right, Joe? I mean, listen, even big time D1 schools have trouble even getting one quarterback that can play. New Mexico is down to their 3rd string quarterback here. This has blowout to me written all over it. I think Tulsa goes in, takes care of business here. I like them to cover against New Mexico.
Okay, what are we feeling most confident about in the NFL this week? Joe, you're up first. Give me a couple of your favorite plays.
There's a lot to like here, and I think Matt's going to jump on this one too. So rather than try to claim that it's mine, maybe it's a shared pick. But the Washington Redskins +3 Sunday night.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, listen,
Feels like a super contest play.
Yeah, it feels like a super contest
We need one
play.
win.
Yeah, for sure.
Dave, you know what we could do? We could play the Raiders and the Redskins. We're guaranteed to win there.
Done.
I love that play. And honestly, listen, I truly believe this. I think the Eagles, this is a smash fest against the Giants. I think they just annihilate them in this
Giants
game.
are beat up, right?
This just has the Giants. I mean, listen, McAdoo comes out and throws Eli Manning under the bus. It's like, the guy's won 2 Super Bowls, and what have you ever done, McAdoo? I mean, I don't know. This seems like a team that might just start spiraling out of control here. So for me,
the best thing about McAdoo is that he got to where he is by calling plays, and now he's no longer going to call the plays.
Yeah.
It's like, great. The one thing you did well.
What would you say you do here?
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Any others? Eagles over the Giants. That one seems easy. Redskins over the Raiders on Sunday night. What else you got?
Under Tennessee, Seattle 42.5. Like Matt was talking about early, heavy influence on the running game for the Tennessee Titans. That's always great for an under. Seattle can play defense. They can't protect. They're going to be on the road. This is going to be a very sluggish affair. I like the under 42.5 total points. Tennessee, Seattle.
All right, if you want to keep up to date, real-time changes to the odds, SBRodds.com. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel for all of the videos from Sportsbook Review and SBR Picks, SBR Sports Picks on Twitter. It gives you all of the great content as well as insight into how the lines are changing and other updates from content creators that they have on staff. Guys, thanks so much for being with us alongside Joe Fortenbaugh and Matt Brown. My name's Dave Farra. We'll catch you next week for another installment of the Play Action Podcast.